to start, our first question comes from Jake. He says, my attorney said that I will only be charged with a misdemeanor even though I had 20 pounds of marijuana on me. Is this true?
Well, your attorney may be under the influence of marijuana telling you that. Possession of 20 pounds of marijuana is more likely than not going to be charged with possession with intent to distribute because of the weight. In order to be charged with possession, it has to be consistent with personal use.
Okay.
And 20 pounds is a very, very large amount of marijuana. And I have seen cases, and I have actually had trials before where you're talking about a smaller amount, and the issue is that for personal use or is that intended to be sold?
Well, that brings us to another question. This one is from Barb. She says, my cousin was arrested for having 2 pounds of marijuana in her home. Why was she not charged with possession with intent, but the guy in my class was charged with intent for having 1 ounce in little baggies?
Right. It's easier to answer the second part of her question than the first, because on the first end, you know, that first person with 2 pounds, they may be cooperating and working with the police for all you know. It's hard to speculate. But with regards to the second question, with intent to distribute, they're looking for evidence that it's going to be for sale and not personal use, like packaging, the small amounts in small bags. The weight is another factor that they look at, the overall weight. Any officer observations for possession with intent to distribute? Did it look like a hand-to-hand transaction occurred between a person and a vehicle before they approached and found this? Does the person arrested have a large amount of cash in small bills, carrying multiple cell phones, a weapon? They also look for evidence of personal use. I mean, does the person arrested even have a pipe or rolling paper when you're talking about marijuana? But they're looking, the difference is what is intended to be sold and what is for your own personal use. And sometimes that's the jury question in a trial.
So the guy or whoever there was that had 1 ounce of marijuana, that's enough for, I don't know, that's like, I don't know, 20 or 30 marijuana cigarettes. That might be enough for just one person's personal stash, or one person, but because this person had it all individually, had it broken down into individual packets, that appears to be like they're packaging it for sale. That might explain why it looked like it was being prepared for individual sales.
Some things go both ways on that, because I've also represented people that were charged with possession with intent to distribute because they had a bag of marijuana and they also had a scale. And their explanation was, when I buy it, I want to weigh it, just like the guy who's selling it is packaging it in certain amounts. But it's absolutely on a case-by-case basis, and you have to look at the totality of all the facts. And also, one that I didn't mention from before, does the person who was arrested have a previous history of drug history for selling or distribution? That's a factor that the police and the district attorney are going to look into to decide whether or not they're going to charge you with possession with intent to distribute or simple possession.
Something very interesting that you mentioned not very long ago, outside of just being arrested for having the drug, the illegal drugs, you said the paraphernalia also factors into the charges as well.
Right. I mean, if your defense is that it's for personal use, then you would expect to see something that would be associated with that, like a pipe, rolling papers, that type of activity. Even with heroin, I mean, people inject heroin with needles. I mean, if you're arrested and you have a bag that has needles in it and you have a strap that you'll put on your arm and things like that, that makes it obvious to me that that's more consistent with personal use than with selling. But then you also have that crossover category of some people who are selling to support a habit. So they're users and selling to support the habit. And that again, everything is going to be on a case-by-case basis as to how the district attorney or the courts proceed with that.
Okay.